It seems like I go a few months and then I stumble across either a gospel passage at Mass or in my own personal reflection. It seems like about every 2 months I'm reminded that the world is going to end, and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. And then so we hear that though, we hear these reminders that the world's going to end, and we sort of, we straighten up, we get a little anxious. Furthering our anxiety this year, I think, are a couple of things. The Mayans tell us that this really is the end of the world. So all of you with your Mayan calendars are extra anxious. A couple of more humorous things, I think, that show us that the world is probably coming to an end this year. I don't know if you heard last night, Notre Dame is now the #1 football team in the country. And so that is a sign that the apocalypse is definitely coming. Bishop Coyne pointed this out on Twitter yesterday. He said that the world is definitely coming to an end because there are no more Twinkies. If you heard, Hostess went under, I don't know, Friday or something like that, so no more Twinkies. So the world is definitely, this is really the end. But anyways, all of that aside, I do think we really do get anxious a little bit when we hear about the end of the world. And we think we have to shape up. And certainly there's that helpful reminder, that aspect of these end-of-the-world readings. But I also think that sometimes we go too far, and I think we ought to take a little bit of comfort at the same time when we hear these things. We have to trust Christ a little bit, in the sense that we were baptized. We've been baptized. We've been saved by Christ's, cleansing baptism. We're here. We receive the sacraments. We go to confession with some regularity. We're here at Mass on Sunday. We're doing the things that God asks of us. We're receiving His sacraments. And so I think in some sense we should probably trust that a little bit more than we typically do. Not that we would ever presume of our salvation or run around telling everyone, I'm going to heaven. But we do believe that Christ actually is telling the truth when He says, if you remain in my love, then you remain in me. And so I wonder, sometimes I think that maybe something that would be helpful for us to think about today is not so much that I have to straighten up, although I do. I know that. Of course we all do. But maybe we should be thinking not so much about the people that are here at Mass, the people that have been baptized, the people that do go to confession, the people that do all of those things like we do. What I'd like us to think about when we think about the end of the world and hear this gospel today is, what are we doing, and it maybe should get us to think about the people that aren't here, that don't receive the sacraments with regularity, and to have some concern for them. And I would say that the biggest surprise for me as a priest, one of the biggest surprises I think, is that when I was even in the seminary, I thought my family was sort of one of the weird ones where we had people who had left the church, but most people didn't have that in their family. I've realized as a priest, especially as a pastor, I hear from everybody, Father, I've got a cousin, my sisters, my brothers, my uncle, they left the church. What do I do about that? They don't go to church, they don't go to Catholic Mass, they don't believe in God, whatever. They've left the church. They were here and they're not here. And I hear from people, I hear that all the time. And I think that it's then when we hear that, we think and we're concerned, because when we hear things about the end of the world, we're reminded that at some point your vote is finally cast. And so there is a moment where there's no longer an opportunity to jump back to the right side. And so we fear a little bit about ourselves, but I think more so even for the people who we love, who have left. And obviously we'll be at dinner with a lot of them this Thursday. And so that anxiety maybe is even ratcheted up a bit. And I think in order to think about this, what I would like to do for a moment is to think about one of the biggest problems and one of the biggest reasons people have left the church en masse. Second largest denomination in the United States, former Catholics. One of the problems, and one of the main problems I think, is how the people who aren't here right now perceive us who are here. And the way they perceive us who are here right now in our world is that we being here, because we're here, we are deranged. We are literally insane. And we have some sort of mental difficulty, and that's why we're here. We can talk about the 50s or the 60s. I don't know about them because I wasn't born, but I hear that they were a great time where people really respected Catholicism for the most part. And it was a credible thing to be Catholic. Well, we can long for those days, but it doesn't do us any good. What we have to acknowledge is the fact that today, in our culture, we are viewed as crazy and as insane for being here. And I think what that starts to do is it starts to wear on us, and we start to think it too, I think on some level. We start to listen to that and we start to believe it. Yeah, we are weird. You know, Catholicism is kind of weird. I'm sensitive to this because I grew up in it. I grew up in this, as we all obviously are in it, but I remember it's especially real for me because when I look back and I think about my time in college at Hanover, taking a theology class, and just being in that environment, my faith was challenged all the time. And it was seen as like some sort of superstitious thing that I did because I was dumb. And it was just, you get continually challenged. And I think looking back on that, I'm shocked that anyone who's in high school or college can remain. It's a miracle those people who come through that and are still Catholic when they're 23. Our faith, it's just assumed today that it is ridiculously moronic to be here. There's a list. I wrote down the list of things that people say to us about our faith. And the people that are not here, the things that they view us for being crazy for. This isn't an exhaustive list, but this is a lot of the things. People will say things like, Mass is boring. Why are you Catholic? People will say, not at Annunciation, at all Catholic churches, I don't like the music at Catholic Masses. How can you stand it? Why do you still go? The preaching is bad. People will say, I'm not entertained at Mass. Why do you go? You're crazy for being Catholic. They'll say things like, you've had evil popes in the past. Why are you still Catholic? You caused the Crusades thousands of years ago. Why are you still Catholic? You're crazy for staying. You burned non-Catholics or tortured them in the Inquisition. You burned witches. Why are you still Catholic? Don't you know about that? Don't you know the history? The Catholic Church hates science. You're against science. Why? Why are you still Catholic? Why do you stay? You worship Mary. You pray to statues. Don't you know that's idolatry? Why are you still there? You're crazy for staying. You hate homosexuals. Why do you do that? Why do you take away their dignity? Why are you still Catholic? You're against divorce. Why do you do that? Why do you stay in that old, archaic, dusty church? Your priests and bishops have abused children. Why do you stay? This list could go on, but there's just a sampling of the reasons that people who aren't here think that we're crazy for being here. And we start to believe it. I know it started to sink into me. And you just continue and continue to get punched in a spiritual sense and deflated. And the problem is then, the reason this works and the reason that the second largest denomination in the United States is ex-Catholics is because we don't have responses. We don't have responses. We don't know the responses. I know when I was hit with all of these things over and over again growing up, I would just be like, and just kind of bow my head and just sort of walk away because I didn't know what to say. And these things are the reason that Pope Benedict has said, this is the year of faith. We need to know what we believe. Not so much, yes, we need to know it for our sake, absolutely, and it's important to know these things. But the year of faith is not, and this is hard for Americans to hear, the year of faith is not first and foremost about me or about you. It's about the people that aren't here. And we need, I saw it was amazing. I heard it from other priests this week. I saw it from Pope Benedict, saw it from Bishop Coyne, saw it from the Bishops' Conference. They were meeting this week in Baltimore. Saw it all over the place. All of these different people were talking about a similar thing, which is we need to be able to respond and we need to know the responses to these objections. If you think about it, these things are really effective because, for one thing, they're short. Mass is boring. 3 words. We're in a Twitter generation now. If you're not familiar with Twitter, it's something where you put it on the internet and it's 20 words, and that's all you get. You can't go over that. Attacks against the Catholic Church are Twitterable. Mass is boring. I don't like the music. You hate science. Most of these are 3 words. You worship Mary. And then when people say that to us, even if we decide, you know what, I'm going to stand up for my faith, typically what we do is we go and we try, okay, let me go Xerox a page out of the catechism. Okay, yeah, well, let me explain it to you over the next 40 minutes. But really it's because I'm uncomfortable and I don't really know exactly what I'm saying. And so Pope Benedict, Bishop Coyne, the Bishops' Conference, Cardinal Dolan, all these people are out there saying, what we need to do is we need to Twitterify our responses, and we need to know them and we need to use them. And this is not, basically what they're saying is we need to go on the offensive. And people hear that and they're like, oh, here come the Crusades again. We're not talking about violence, we're not talking about anger, we're not talking about rage, we're not talking about any of that stuff. We're talking about we have to, out of love and compassion, respond to these questions and have something to say. St. Peter says very clearly in his letter, always be ready to give a reason for your hope. That's Twitter. You could put that on Twitter. Always be ready to give a reason for your hope. I think for the last 40 years, most Catholics have not been able to give a reason, a quick reason for their hope. And I think what we find if we start to look at these and actually say, you know what, I'm not going to just keep getting punched in the face, metaphorically speaking, with my faith. I'm going to stand up. It's an amazing thing that I've realized. You respond to one of these questions that somebody puts to you at the Thanksgiving table or online or at bridge or euchre tournament or whatever, coffee shop. If you just simply respond and ask something back, typically people backpedal 100 miles an hour. Somebody will say something to me like, well, I'm not entertained at Mass. If you say something to them back which is not angry, not full of rage, simply trying to ask for more, is something to the effect of, so do you feel like the Mass is meant to first and foremost entertain you? People will backpedal, oh, wow, no, they'll backpedal 100 miles an hour. We don't often respond because we think we're just supposed to be like, yeah, well, I am Catholic and it's a crazy thing. I know, it doesn't make any sense. People talk about the sins of past popes or current priests or current bishops. To you, that's a real common one. A simple response. Did Jesus say anything about perfect bishops? or perfect priests or perfect popes? I've never read that anywhere. People say things like, you caused the Crusades. A simple question back to them. Well, which one are you, which crusade? Most people are like, oh, about backpedal 100 miles an hour for that. Most people don't even know that there were multiple crusades and don't have an answer. They just learned that in freshman World Civ class. Sometimes, just simply even asking someone to explain it more. You don't even have to have just so if someone, you worship Mary. Well, really, could you tell me a little bit more about what it is that we believe about Mary? What is it that you think we believe? You don't even have to come back with a response about what we do believe. Just ask them to explain it more. And they'll typically backpedal 100 miles an hour. That's not the point. The point is not to go out and get people backpedaling 100 miles an hour. But the point is that we have to, eventually, we need to start this year of faith. If we're really concerned about the people who aren't here, we have to realize that if we just simply keep our mouth closed and never say anything back to all the people that put false accusations about the church out there, then of course no one's going to come. If we want to reverse the tide and reverse the trend, we have to actually start asking people questions back. Short questions. Not, hey, I'll fax you the catechism paragraph on Monday. We need quick responses. We need to have the confidence to be able to stand up and actually do that and defend our faith. And ultimately, we have to do what St. Peter asks, which is to always be ready to give a reason for our hope. And so it takes courage to do that. It takes knowledge to do that. We have to know our faith. It takes wisdom. It takes charity. It takes compassion. It takes a lot of things. It takes strength. And we pray for that. And if we don't have as much as we need, which we never do, we keep coming back and we say, Lord, fill up my heart. Fill me more. Give me more of the things that I lack so that I can be a witness to the people who are out there, who are not here, and who think that we're crazy for being here.